All right, thank you, Kat. So thank you all for joining us for our 8th month of the Champions of Employment. So today we're going to kind of talk about that creating comfort in exploring employment. So to get us all started, just so we know who's in the audience, please take a moment to complete the following poll question. So what is your role? Are you a support coordinator? Are you a service provider? Maybe you're a regional office employee like a UR chair or self-directed supports or assistant director. Maybe you work for another state office, VR, Department of Higher Education, Workforce Development, VR, rehab services for the blind. Maybe you're an individual or family member or some other role. So you've got about 30 seconds left. Go ahead and let us know what your role is. Okay, I see the time's up, and so majority of you, about 25% or 25 of you have said you're all support coordinators. So thank you for joining us today. So we're going to move forward. And for today, we specifically want to focus on how can we as support coordinators help parents or other family members gain that confidence and comfort in their loved one exploring competitive integrated employment. We all know that each one of us, there's some amount of risk when you think about work. Each one of us has our own little fears. And then when you think about a family member with a disability, sometimes that fear just gets magnified. So what we want to kind of work through today is how we as support coordinators can help those family members feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more relaxed about their loved one being able to explore employment. So starting off today, I'm going to describe one of my coworkers. She is a parent of a adult child with a disability who recently graduated school. So this individual is already out of high school, and now it's the adult world. So this parent, her biggest concern is safety. Things that she has mentioned about her child or her adult child to me. Um, there's a fear of that lack of safety awareness. She has told me stories about where her adult child doesn't pay attention to oncoming cars and will walk wide across a parking lot with a car coming straight at that person. Um, she has also told me stories about her adult child wanting to be liked by everybody and seeing everybody as a potential friend, and that concern that, her adult child could follow somebody out, walk along with somebody and just keep walking and then end up lost. Or even worse yet, that her adult child uh, would even be taken advantage of, that somebody would say, hey, come with us. Um, and her adult child would do it and not realize that not everybody is your friend. Um, so um, other concerns for Kris is her adult child's limited speech and communication. So she and her husband often have to be detectives to figure out what exactly is going on. Um, Especially if she was not there to see it. So if she didn't see the event, and she doesn't have any kind of context, uh, it really means that she has to go out of her way to be that detective to really find out what's going on and what her offspring is trying to tell her. So um, in my conversations with her, what uh, she wants an environment that provides that protective oversight. She is very concerned about her child's safety. But with that, she also wants to have that communication point person, that person that she can go to get kind of the scoop. What happened today? What may be a potential issue that her child might be frustrated or upset about, or really excited about and happy about. So kind of have that, what happened when I wasn't there that I might need to know. Um, Now, a preference for her and her husband, since both her and her husband work full time and typically 9 to 5 hours, uh, she needs something for her child to do during that time, because both she and her husband are not really able to provide that support that he needs to engage in activities, learn things, and other things. So she is kind of looking at something that would kind of more mirror her own work schedule as well. So, strengths of her adult child. Her adult child takes tremendous pride uh, in the work um, that person does. That person, um, once that person has mastered tasks or learned how to do the tasks and knows how to do it well, no other prompts are needed. That person can independently do that work. And this person has a desire to want to be busy, um, wants to have things to do, doesn't want to just sit there and be bored all day. So this person really wants to have things to do that will make him or her feel valued. So you can also see over in the picture on the slide, you know, when you look at this, okay, is this parent kind of in the red zone, where it's like, no, not interested in work? Or is this parent in the yellow zone, kind of like, okay, I'm cautious? Or in that green zone, like, okay, yeah, I'm all for it, let's go. And what you can see is Kris is not necessarily opposed to competitive integrated employment, but she's not certain it's the best option for her child. She's more kind of on that borderline of the yellow red. So in my conversations with her, she has basically said that if it's the right fit, if she feels like her child is being supported appropriately, then she's on board with it. So it's kind of a matter of trying to figure out what is that going to look like. So now what we are going to do, this is where we are going to try something new today. So we're going to open it up to you guys to provide some ideas of what you would do. What would that conversation look like? What options would you offer that parent? What resources or tools might you use? So let's go ahead and try this. Go ahead and try and unmute yourself and give us some input. How would you help Kris?
What do you want me to add your supervisor on? Okay.
Okay, I'm hearing some background. So does anyone have any thoughts that offer?
Maybe if you could find a work environment that's kind of small and close, so everybody knows each other. It'd be less likely for someone to, come take advantage of, maybe not something in retail, but something where they're working with the same 4 or 5 people every day.
What I'm hearing from you is you would kind of start to focus in, okay, let's look at what that environment looks like and see if we can't identify what that environment looks like. Okay. Others?
One of my families, we were talking about like learning what to do if there was a fire or what to do if there was an intruder, and to learn to identify who would be a safe person and not safe person.
Okay, so knowing that, one of the concerns is that safety, and with that safety, parent might have the fear of her child not being able to respond appropriately in emergency. So kind of helping in a work situation, who are your safe people? Who are the go-to people that you can trust? Okay. Other thoughts?
Yeah, if you think all is okay.
I will ask if you are not wanting to offer a thought right now, please possibly mute yourself. We're hearing some background information. So I want to make sure we're only hearing those who are going to answer and give us some thoughts here.
Sandy, I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody again. I unmuted everybody so they could participate. But I'm just going to go ahead and mute everyone, and if they want to participate, they need to unmute.
Okay, thanks.
Sandy, I know one of the things that we talked about was that any decision you make doesn't have to be final. So if you try out something and it doesn't work, move on to the next possible option.
So someone mentioned, kind of making a referral to VR to assist with determining what kind of employment VR would recommend. And I think that's a kind of a perfect segue kind of to what's happened in this individual situation. So I'm going to move on, but I would encourage people, if you have other thoughts, please put them in the chat. So this individual in his last year of high school was connected with VR. So VR was involved in those discussions. And at that time, it was determined that this individual was not ready to move forward with VR. And of course, the special ed teacher felt fairly strongly that sheltered employment was probably the best option for this individual. So the special education teacher kept talking about sheltered employment to the family. And of course, that's at the end of this, that's what the family was thinking. They were thinking, hey, sheltered employment, protective oversight the whole time he's at work. It would be during the hours that we're working, so that would meet that preference of being during our work schedule as well. And of course, this parent had also told me that her child would be happy no matter where he or she was working. Again, this person takes tremendous pride in the work that they do. So the setting, whether it's competitive employment or sheltered employment, probably not a big deal for this person. So this parent has, excuse me, this parent has helped applied for sheltered employment. But in conversations with her, and as Stephanie mentioned, it's not we're locked in kind of thing. Um, I had numerous conversations with Kris over several years, talking to her about different options and what that would look like, and uh, what could be done. Um, so, having numerous conversations, and anytime, her opinion could change. So, right now, she's comfortable with kind of exploring competitive employment. She's willing to start with that career planning to really try and identify what would make that good fit. So, as one person had mentioned, trying to identify what is that ideal work condition. What does that look like? Does that look like a somewhat closed environment where you don't have a lot of people outside the business that comes in? Maybe it's not open to the public. Um, is it that type of environment? Is it small setting where people really know each other really well? Um, what exactly is that ideal condition, ideal environment going to look like? Also, with that, could really give us an idea of what skills does he have? What interests does this person have that can really help to kind of bring that all the points together. So looking at what the ideal environment would look like, and what this person's interests are, this person's hobbies, what this person likes doing, what this person is really skilled at, and looking at where do all those points come together or intersect, that we could really find that good job match. And like somebody else was talking about, kind of identifying or helping uh, the individual to kind of figure out who are the safe people. So uh, we already know some of the barriers to employment, the safety awareness concerns. We know that this person's pace is also an issue. This person has one pace. It works for that person, but may not always work for all employers. So kind of those skills that you need in any and all types of employment. So with pre-vocational services, we can kind of work on trying to get a little bit faster, but we can also work on how do you identify those safe people. Um, so, and then of course, at the end of the day, she still has some reservations about competitive integrated employment. So just because she's willing to give career planning and pre-vocational services a try to say, okay, let's see what we can find out here and what other doors it might open up. She's also going, I still reserve my right to maybe favor sheltered employment if that would be better. So um, just knowing it's not a one or done. So what kind of tips does Kris have for support coordinators? So one of the things that helped her get more comfortable with being willing to try career planning and pre-vocational services is having somebody she could go to that was able to discuss the options and explain the process confidently. So when she would talk to me, she would feel my confidence. She would be like, okay, Sandy knows what she's talking about. Um, I feel like I got an idea of what this is going to look like and how we're going to progress from one thing to the next. And she could feel like, okay, all right, I'm on board with what you're talking about. Um, However, not everybody feels that confident. Maybe you're a new support coordinator, you're just learning about all the services. Or maybe you haven't had that much experience coordinating those employment supports. So you're kind of like going, I think I know this, but I'm not quite positive. I'm not certain. So what helped Kris was knowing that there was an expert that her support coordinator could go to. So if you're new or not experienced, or you're just not that confident, have that expert that you can go to and that you can go ask questions. And don't be afraid to let those parents know that you're going to an expert. That was one thing that Kris found comforting, is that her support coordinator was willing to reach out to me when she didn't know the answer or she didn't feel confident, and she's like, well, I don't know the answer, but I think Sandy does. Let me go to Sandy. And that gave that parent some comfort. Um, so great thing in the chat box. So somebody put, as a provider of waivered services, finding it helpful to review with the parents the 4 components of employment services. So talking about the 4 different options. So career planning to determine those strengths, interests, skills, and preferred conditions of employment, including self-discovery and job exploration. Resulting in those vocational themes that become that roadmap. Looking at the person's comfort, their pace, so all of that good thing. So thanks for putting that in the chat box. So as Stephanie mentioned, keep revisiting things. Like I said, my conversations with Kris, I had numerous conversations with her over the course of a couple of years. Just again, kind of letting her know the different options, how those would look, talking about what her concerns were, what kept her up at night, and how we could address that. So the other thing that she mentioned was those small steps. So you want to meet the parent where the parent is at. So again, kind of finding out what keeps that parent up at night. It's not an all or done thing. So you want to think of things as a continuum. You want to ask what needs to happen for that parent or that family member to feel more comfortable exploring employment in the next 3 to 5 years. And maybe we need to start with other services and get them on the road to employment too. So the other thing is, parents, family members, they are vital members of the team. So while it's also important to remember what the person wants and keep that in the forefront, that their family becomes their good support system. So keeping them in there and part of those conversations, and taking into consideration their concerns, their fears, and trying to address those, that's going to help make everyone more comfortable and a more, that individual more successful as well. And of course, keep following up. So if you tell the parent, hey, I'm going to get you this information, make sure you do. So any other thoughts? So put it in the chat box. Let us see what you're thinking. Any other tips that? Go ahead,
Sorry,
Kat.
Sandy. Kathy Abelson has her hand raised.
Okay. See if I can unmute her. Okay, Kathy, you want to talk?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. I apologize. I was a little bit late getting on the meeting, but I'm listening and I love what you have to share, and I love the way you share it, especially talking about what keeps parents up at night. That is such a great way to get them to open up and to, give you options to explore how you can help an individual. Um, I work with a company. We're new to Missouri. I just started getting on some of your webinars. Our company is Safe and Home, and we provide remote support and assistive technology, mostly to folks on the waiver program. And a lot of people that we support, because we've been doing this for many years in Ohio and Indiana, um, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Missouri, we just got our approval from CMS to provide services here. But what we do, we support people who who go to a day program, or they work outside of their home, even though they're living independently or partly independently. And there's so many options. Um, you were talking about bringing in other experts, and we are experts because we um, we're a person-centered company. We go along with the ISP program, and we really work with the individual in their care circle to make sure that not only are they safe in home, like our name, but safe in the community. A couple of things that we provide that right off the top of my head, I was thinking, oh, wow, this fits in so well. We have an Emperor's device that is like a I've fallen and I can't get up button on steroids, because there's two-way communication with the remote support center or the care circle. And let's see, we also do check-ins by remote support. Has a person left for work? Have
So
they
Kathy,
returned?
I'm going to stop you right here because I love what you're saying. And that's something that we have. I mean, Missouri is a technology first state. So we are
Yes.
all about looking at technology. And of course, with staffing shortages where they're at, um, technology is a great way to make sure that people are still getting the support they need, even if they can't have a person right there. And of course, sometimes that technology can even be a better support than an actual person, because it allows a person to be even more independent. So I
Yes.
love that you're mentioning that. Great. And yeah, that's something that we definitely want to keep in mind, is as we're talking about a parent's fears and what keeps them up at night, kind of looking at, hey, can technology help here? Can this be a win-win situation? So thanks for bringing that up. I
Absolutely.
want to keep moving us on though, because we've got another guest speaker here. So
Well, thank
thank you.
you so much. And I'm enjoying this. You guys are awesome.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. All right. So, in the chat box, we had somebody else kind of mentioned that prior to adding employment services to an individual's ISP, this service provider has suggested and even facilitated some separate planning meetings to specifically review those employment services and those four components. So, that's also a wonderful way to help a parent or a family or even an individual feel more comfortable with taking that step, hearing from somebody who actually provides those services. And it's like, okay, how are you going to help me, or how are you going to help my loved one with progressing through employment? So, great tip. Thank you so much for putting that in there, Kris. All right, so now I want to move on to Stephanie, since we've got Stephanie. And Stephanie's going to talk to us about her situation with her adult child, what her fears are, and where she is on that continuum of feeling comfortable with her adult child pursuing employment. So, Stephanie, go ahead and tell us about your situation.
Hello, everybody. So my daughter is Claire, and she's 18 years old. She just graduated from high school this year, and she is working with vocational rehab and receiving employment supports. She did a summer work program between her junior and senior year of high school, and she worked in a grocery store and was able to work in the floral section. And she really found that she enjoyed that quite a bit. So our focus has been on finding something, a job like possibly at a florist or in another grocery store that has a floral section for her. So of course, as a mom, I've got all these fears for her leaving that little classroom that she was in with all of the teachers that she knew and I knew and her friends, and that little area, and moving into the big world, the real world. One of my greatest fears is for her safety. I'm worried that she'd be taken advantage of. She's very trusting and easily makes friends. So that's a huge concern of mine, is everybody she works with, are they going to not only respect her and not exploit her, but is she going to be bullied? That's something that's really an unrealistic fear, because she has never expressed that she's been bullied all through school. But yet it's a fear of mine. I've seen that she's been left out. So, I take that as a form of bullying, whereas she really does not recognize that herself. So obviously there's another fear, is she going to be taken advantage of, or is she going to be bullied? She does drive. So at first, when we were looking at jobs, I was focusing on, she needed to work in the town where we live. Well, it's a small town of 1,200 people. There's not many options. She can drive 25 minutes and be in Jeff City and have more options. So after the few very limited options came up,
Uh-oh, it looks like her internet is having issues again. Um, Unfortunately, I mean, I'll try and step in here. Not sure I can do as great a job as Stephanie talking about her fears. Of course, she was kind of mentioning with the driving, her daughter, what she ended up doing, she got her daughter some driving lessons. And one of the things that I remember Stephanie telling me that really kind of helped to comfort her is when she first met up with the driving instructor and saw the car, and the car was all full of dents and dings and all kinds of things. The driving instructor looked at her daughter and then basically said, "There's nothing you can do to this car that hasn't already been done." And that just allowed Stephanie to kind of take that sigh, like, "Phew, okay, all righty, okay, it's not going to be that bad." But then Stephanie also told me that she came across an app, a 360 app. So as Kathy was talking about that remote monitoring, those technology devices, Stephanie actually came across one of those assistive technology, those remote supports that helped put her at ease. And Stephanie, are you back with us now?
I am.
Okay, I'm going to let you take it back again.
So yes, I think you talked about how she got some driver's training, which my husband and I for years thought, there's no way she's going to be able to drive. But then again, we had to weigh the risk versus benefits, and are happy that she's a fairly safe driver. She drives slow, but that's okay. Yes, the 360 app, as soon as she got her license and went off on her own, we got that installed on her phone, and we can watch her when she's en route. We know when she gets to where she's supposed to be, and then that she's safe, besides just the text that we request before she leaves and when she gets someplace. So that's been a big relief for us.
So knowing that Stephanie's fears are more of those fears that all parents go through, my kids leaving my house, I'm not going to be there with them all the time. It's the what ifs, what if they're bullied? What if they have a bad day? What if they get into an accident? So instead of unmuting, I'm just going to ask you guys to put it in the chat. So give us a thought or two of what you might do to help a parent like Stephanie. What options would you offer? What tools might you use? What might those conversations look like? So once I get something in the chat, I'll look at moving on. Okay, so maybe connecting with VR, having that job coach, would a job coach help? Of course, that various technology mentor, um, going through the motions. So kind of that job role, that role playing, kind of knowing what to expect. What are those expectations? So yeah, sometimes that can help. Okay. Great thoughts, everyone. So then Stephanie, kind of moving on, what's the current outcome look like?
So Kris, I see that you asked if she has a job coach, and she does. She has a job coach through an agency, and they've been working together on interviewing skills and filling out applications. That's the area that they're in right now. And she has one informal interview she had yesterday at a florist, and then she's got one tomorrow. I think it's more of an interview because it's scheduled for 2 o'clock tomorrow, with good prospects at both places. And then ideally, once she gets the job, she will continue to have supports a job coach for a short period of time. It's not anticipated she's going to need too much coaching after she gets settled in.
So I know, Stephanie, you've kind of talked a little while earlier about that risk versus benefit. And one of the things that you kind of told me is not only do you have a fear of your daughter being bullied or a fear of your daughter getting in an accident, but the other fear that kind of helps put things in balance is, and I don't know if you froze on me or not, so I'll just jump in there. But one of the fears that you had mentioned to me was that fear of being left out, that fear of not having the same experience as others her own age. So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that a little bit more.
Sure. So her brother is 3 years older than her. And we really started thinking that we were going through a lot of the same things with him. When he got a job after college, he moved to Kansas City, and he was only 20 years old and took off and moved away from us. And we had a lot of the same concerns for him. And he's been working successfully at his job for a year and a half, and he, knock on wood, has not been any accidents in Kansas City. So seeing that he's been successful reminds us that she's going to be successful as well. We have to give her the chance.
And then, of course, again, kind of focusing on those actual experience and strengths. So I know that was another thing that you told me that you were having to remind yourself of. Even though you had this fear of your daughter being bullied, you had to say, well, that hasn't been an issue. So kind of looking at what her strengths are, to kind of help keep those fears in check. And then of course, we've already talked about finding those resources. So connecting with that driver's ed, and then of course using that app, that 360, kind of has helped bring down your fear zone, your fear level there.
Yes.
So, all right. So moving on, kind of tell us what your tips are for support coordinators.
So as I said before, give something a try, and then if it doesn't work out, have a plan B. Have that plan B ready, even with the first thing that you try, and be realistic and know that things probably aren't going to go as you plan. And that's really just life. There's not always the straight narrow way is not always the best way. So just being flexible and being realistic, not setting your expectations too high. Again, knowing if your child or your client, starts a job and there's issues, and or they get fired or they don't like the job, that there's going to be another job. Right now, there's a lot of jobs available in competitive employment. Again, I think just being flexible is super important, and being realistic, giving everybody a chance to have a meaningful day.
I know one of the things that we talked in preparation for this webinar, this presentation, is also the fact that, yes, we deal with people with disabilities, but they're people first. And if you think about that, we all have hopes, we all have dreams, we all have fears, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, we all have support needs. So it's treating individuals with disabilities the same as we treat those without disabilities. It's looking at them as a person first and trying to find out what's important to them, what makes them tip, what makes them smile, um, what makes them feel good about themselves. And then going, okay, all right, so how do we make that happen? What are the support needs going to look like? For each person, it's going to be different. Dignity of risk. That's what that's all about. Is you think about it, we all have learned from trying and failing at something. Whether it's been riding that bike and the first time the training wheels came off, we fell down and we realized, oh, wait a minute, I gotta balance myself a little bit better here. Or I've gotta stop before I hit that car. So we've all learned from mistakes. We've all learned from having not the best outcome there. So it's that dignity that we all have from learning from that, though. So are we giving people with disabilities the opportunities to learn from their mistakes? Very important. Provide people with a voice during those planning stages. So yes, it's definitely important that we listen to them, listen to what they want to. But again, when we're talking about families, and the loved ones and the fears they might have, it's also listening to what their fears are and going, okay, what do we need to address these? So what does that look like? So like you've mentioned, make sure to acknowledge and address those parents' fears. And of course, earlier you said it, no decision has to be final. You can always come back and revisit and make revisions. So, some resources. So dignity of risk. This is an article, again, that kind of really talks about how we all learn from our own mistakes, and that everybody, regardless of whether or not you have a disability, should be allowed that opportunity to to learn, to grow. Now, of course, it doesn't mean setting them up for failure, but it may mean that letting them try something. Oops, you burned the macaroni. Okay, what did we learn? We can't watch TV and cook at the same time. We've got to do one or the other, or we've got to set a timer. As far as tools that might be useful in having those in-depth discussions, charting the life course tools, they have a number of tools that are very useful in having those very, very personal discussions. So, kind of looking at when we talk about employment, employment's not separate from other things. Employment intersects with everything. It intersects with where you live. It intersects with who your personal relationships are, safety needs, financial, all those different things. So having that discussion with that person and their family about, kind of what those concerns are with those different areas and how important is that, someone might have a concern of, oh yeah, I have a concern of them not being liked by their coworkers. But when you look at that, that might be on a scale of 1 to 10, that might be down around a 2. Whereas the fear of somebody, being financially taken advantage of, now that fear might be up at an 8. So kind of taking a look at, okay, where is that? Where is that fear, and how pressing is that? And then when we look at kind of, okay, what are all the resources to kind of help address this fear? So I know Stephanie and I talked about, with her fear of her daughter being bullied, kind of using that integrated support star, where she could put like all of her daughter's personal attributes that, all those strengths that she wanted to focus on. And then as the relationships, look at, okay, who does your daughter go to? So if your sister got, or if your daughter got bullied, who could she lean on? Who could she go to help work through that? So looking at those relationships, looking at community resources. Hey, what kind of community resources are there? Are there, and one of the things that I see with kind of the schools, the anti-bullying websites. Okay, are there some online resources, some community resources out there that Stephanie could provide her daughter to kind of help educate her daughter about the signs of being bullied and where to go to get assistance if she feels like she's being bullied? Kind of those technology. Of course, Stephanie kind of mentioned that 360 apps, putting her at ease, but also looking at, okay, are there technology resources to help with bullying as well? So again, that integrated support star can help you really kind of identify what are all the resources available to help address this particular fear or this particular concern. So before we move on, I think you guys have a great deal of expertise yourself. I mean, just seeing what was put in the chat box and earlier, some of the thoughts you guys have. Are there any other thoughts, suggestions, tools, tips that you guys have that you would like to share with each other? And I'm looking for at least one in the chat box before I move on.
Sandy, Kris made the remark, that it's obviously what we need to remember. It's important to provide the individuals with a voice during their planning meetings, or during the planning stages, period. And for our situation, that's hard for me to do as the support coordinator, which seems odd, and the mother, because Claire is so used to me making decisions for her. And my husband's even kind of like that too. Like, well, you're the social worker, so you know what's best for her. And Claire's gotten used to that herself. And as she ages, we just remind her, you're 18 now, and you can make decisions for yourself. We're here to help you. but she honestly would be very happy staying in her pajamas, staying at home every day. You know, honestly, if it were up to her, that would be fine with her. So I have to encourage her to go out and get a job and
Yeah.
have a meaningful day.
Well, and kind of looking at Chris's situation. So earlier when we were describing Kris and her fears, you know, one of the things that we know about her adult child is the communication difficulties. Um,
Yes.
Most people do not understand or can't understand what her adult child is trying to say.
Yes.
Um, Now they have tried over the years to teach their child how to use communication apps, and it's been hit or miss. And the reason it's been hit or miss, one, their adult child wants to talk. So before going to the communication device, their adult child is going to try and say it with words. And of course, then the other thing is, you know, families, they have a knack for picking up on their loved one's communication that sometimes those apps aren't needed as much because it's like, okay, I know what you mean when you say it like that, you know, or when you say that sound, I know what you're talking about. But again, I think, you know, like you, her adult child just recently graduated high school. So again, used to mom and dad always making the decision. So, um, to some degree, her adult child is like, Mom, you know, what do you think? Um, and it does. It puts another added layer on that parent to be mindful of, okay, wait a minute. Let me try and bring this out. Let me have my child's voice heard. And Kris, I love that you put in there those self-advocacy skills because, you know, yes, that is especially important, especially when we're talking about employment too, because it's that ability to speak up for what you need, whether it's accommodations on the job or, you know, things that you might need out of your employer, your manager, being able to advocate for what you need to make you a good employee. So um, definitely. All right, folks, we're getting close on time. So just a reminder, these webinars are the second Wednesday of every month. So our next one will be September 8th, and then we've got October 13th and November 10th. So we hope to see you back here again and joining us for the next topic. So don't forget to answer that survey when you leave. So that survey is very helpful in helping us determine what future topics, what do we need to do differently to make this a worthwhile event for you. So please take the time out to fill out that survey and let us know what worked, what didn't, and what changes we may need to make, including what topics we need to focus on. So right now, I am the only employment first specialist in the state of Missouri. Here's my contact information. You can reach me at 636-926-1229 or by email at sandy.kaiser, and that is spelled Keyser at dmh.mo.gov. And again, thank you all for joining us. Hope you all have a great Wednesday. And thank you, Stephanie, for sharing your experiences.
Thanks, Sandy.